Well, the Loft is one of the country's leading literary arts organizations. It started in an independent bookstore in 1974, incorporated in 1975. It is based in Minneapolis, and most of our constituents are here locally. But over the years, we've developed a national reputation. So over the years, we have built very organically. We would add 1 class, 2 classes. Now we have about 300 classes a year. We could see from Google Analytics that people were looking at our website from all over the country, and specifically from 425 different communities in Minnesota. So we knew that there was an interest around the state in the work that we do. Over the years, we have in different ways tried to offer our opportunities to different parts of the state. And we heard from people. I would get calls about once a week, can't we have a loft class in our area? I live in outstate Minnesota, and I want to be able to participate in loft offerings, which is why we thought, you know, we really need to figure this out to be able to offer online learning classes. But when you look at that with your overworked staff and people don't quite have the technological skills, our teaching artists had not really taught online, so they didn't know what to do. We started looking at different portals. I mean, it really is actually quite overwhelming. When the champion, the future board chair, stated at a board meeting, this is going to be my priority, I am going to make this happen. I have to say at that point, I knew it had to happen, but I was trying to deal with the chaotic economy. We had just lost our biggest single funder who had decided not to fund the arts. So that was going to be taking $100,000 out of our annual operating budget. I mean, it really felt chaotic. And so at that point, I have said this to him. When he said that, I was like, I don't think I can handle this. But he said, you are going to be left behind if you don't figure this out. And so he just started to champion it. So, but everybody knew it had to happen. So then, for me, I go back to the staff. I have 16 people. I go to the education department. I have our education director who's fabulous at what he does, but he has never taught an online class. He, you know, he doesn't quite know what to do. So, at that point, we said, all right, we just have to figure this out. We went into our circle of teaching artists and found one of our most popular teachers who had an interest in also figuring this out. And we worked with her to see if we could get a pilot class going. Just 1 class, let's see what we can learn on it. And I have to say our education director was such a trooper because he figured it out. He taught himself as he was doing it. As we got going with our first pilot class, instantly it sold out. And like instantly. And the students weren't scared of it. They were comfortable, they were expecting this, and we realized, well, all right, the public is actually ahead of us as far as organizationally. Because we are so mission and outcome driven, we also knew that we wanted to be sure that the experience, and our reputation is so important to us, that the experience in an online class was as good as an experience in an in-person class. So we were also thinking along the, how are we going to evaluate this, and to make sure that we do the same kind of after-course evaluations as we did for all the in-person classes. So when the evaluations came back, everybody said, this is great, I loved it. It was actually, in some ways, better because the domineering person in the class wasn't taking over, and I really felt like as a shy person, I got the kind of feedback the other people in the class got. So I would never say an online class is better, but there were people who it actually, for their personality types, it actually did work better. 2 years ago, we went to a strategy seminar at the National Art Strategies had put on with the leadership team. And part of what makes those seminars so useful is that it's a time to get your leadership team together in the room for 2 days without other meetings. And so it was actually a time that we were, as a team, able to sit down and really talk about how are we going to do this? How are we going to make this happen? So then we got really clear on where are our strengths in trying to launch online learning. What is the need? You know, what are our assumptions going into it? You know, all the logic model pieces. What are we hoping for our short-term outcomes, our long-term outcomes? And by getting absolute clarity on why we were trying to do this, not just because everybody was saying, oh, you got to get into online learning, but really understanding why it would serve our constituents, why it would be a good thing for the Loft, how it would fit into the other programs that we do. Once we got that clarity, then our leadership team was united behind it. So when we had that first pilot class, and it was such a success, so we had that happening. We had our champion, the board chair, saying, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. We were talking about it on staff. Everybody was still nervous about it. A lot of our teaching artists were really nervous about it. So because they were like, are you not going to do in-person classes anymore? Am I going to be left behind because I don't know how to do this? Is the Loft changing? Our culture is changing. And so you had all that fear kind of happening at the same time. For a mid-sized nonprofit, and just for context, the Loft's budget, annual operating budget is around $2 million a year. We have a staff that ranges from 16 to 18 people, and we have about 200 contract teaching artists who we work with within a year. We are constantly amazing ourselves by the amount of work that we pump out. I mean, in some ways, we're kind of like a small university. You have 300 classes a year and all these reading series and awards, and it's people work very, very hard. And when you work really hard, it is hard to make time for professional development. And one of the things that we all needed was to bring up our technological skills. So the first thing is you just had a leader who said, we need to start using all the office technology available to us. Everybody start using Outlook. start using the tools that we have right here. And you know, as you do a cultural shift at an organization, some people were comfortable with that and some people weren't. And we actually butted heads on it with some people. Then we hit the economic crisis of 2007, 2008. So every nonprofit was holding on for dear life, trying to figure out how were we going to navigate through this. We had people who ended up leaving the organization during that time for other opportunities. We had to do restructures. We had to do some layoffs. We then, as we brought people in, we made it a top priority that technological skills was part of what the package, so every hire that we've had since that time, that has been a priority as we're looking at bringing people in. And back to National Art Strategies, as we recently went to a seminar on strategic human resource management, and really started to understand the competencies that we had to have to be able to run the Loft the way we needed to run it. And if you want to be one of the leaders in the country on online learning, you got to be sure that everybody on staff is comfortable in that environment. You know, I really don't know where we would be right now if we had not figured it out and gotten into it. Because our in-person classes, I always see, are going to continue to be the heart of what we do. I mean, they're really wonderful. But we have gotten to be at capacity in the building. There's more need than we can do in the building. We also have a lot of classes around the Twin Cities. But as as I think we are the largest literary center in the country, and we have a national reputation. We've been around a long time. There's just been a lot of people who've wanted to access our resources. So within 1 year, we were having students all over Minnesota in sort of our exurbs, in the suburbs, people who were in our database but just were having trouble getting downtown Minneapolis to get to a class. But now we have students in London and Mumbai and Mexico City and Israel. And that has actually enriched the classroom experience, because now what we've learned is when you are in the online environment, they're actually developing the same kind of rich community that you do. You really bond with people you're in a writing class with, because when you're writing, you tend to come out with your deepest part of your soul, and people really do bond. And we had heard from the inline classes, my guess is there are 500, maybe 1,000 writing groups that have come out of Loft classes over the decades. I'm in one. That you have a class, you kind of bond, and you join a writing group. The online classes have started doing the same thing. They're having meetups in airports. They are connecting in the same way. We have heard from students that we've gotten the most loving thank you notes saying, I just can't tell you how this has transformed my life. I'm in a farm in Lanesboro, and I just have not been able to participate in this kind of arts activity. Now I can. Yeah, you cannot go into the online learning thinking that this is going to be a profit, kind of this easy profit center. To do it right, you really have to invest a lot and a multi-year strategy to do it. And you have to be clear about your outcomes and your standards, because you could ruin your reputation a lot quicker than just one bad teacher in one classroom with people on the ground if you're going out online and going out there and doing it poorly. I think you want to continue to have the same thoughts around the vetting of the teachers and the curriculum, and what is that classroom experience going to be. We also thought a lot about how then is this online student in North Dakota going to interact with the Loft in the way that we want the student who walks into our building and looks around and sees this beautiful space. How are they going to interact with our organization? And that's where we tried to really beef up the other online offerings, to be part of that experience. The final encouragement, but also thinking it through, is to have a sustained, to really think about the full budget, and all parts of the organization are going to be impacted. And so how do you make that happen on a sustained way? Can you get multi-year funding to help pull it together from a variety of sources? And that just, if we had only been able to sort of piecemeal enough together for that first year, we would have then been looking at this professional who we had hired, and we wouldn't have been able to keep him on, but we just knew we had to have enough resources to keep him on during a period of time.